Good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Farhana Sheikh. The wearing of face masks on public transport is not compulsory for now, but it is encouraged following the recent spike in COVID-19 cases in the country. Transport Minister Anthony Loke says his ministry will not set any policy regarding the matter, while reiterating that any COVID-19 directive will only be issued by the Health Ministry. Yesterday, Health Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad said that the government does not intend to reinstate restrictions such as the Movement Control Order (MCO) for the time being. However, the wearing of face masks in crowded places and regular testing are encouraged. Zulkifli assured that the COVID-19 situation in the country was still under control and that health facilities will not be burdened by the increase in patients' admissions. A total of 20,696 COVID-19 cases were reported from December 10th to December 16th, an increase of 62.2% compared to 12,757 cases the week before. The Health Ministry has said it would reinstate the Test, Report, Isolate, Inform, Seek or TRIS framework in response to the over 20,000 COVID-19 cases recorded last week. Azrul Makalib of the Galen Centre for Health and Social Policy evaluates the effectiveness of this framework in curbing the current wave of infections.
We know from the lessons of the past couple of years, it is certainly insufficient and will do very little to address the current surge in COVID-19 cases. What we know that works is to practice what we've been told time and again, maintain distance from one another, practice good hygiene, wear masks in indoor or crowded spaces, and get booster shots, vaccines, especially those in the high-risk categories. We can tell from the number of active cases that COVID-19 is still circulating.
Azrul also weighed in on whether mask mandates should be reintroduced.
Anyone today who is working in a high-capacity, closed environment with long exposure to large numbers of people, such as in hospitals, restaurants, supermarkets, airports, should already be wearing face masks as a standard precautionary practice. We don't need really to impose mandates again or even the harsh restrictions of quarantine like what we did in the past year. So we need to treat this COVID-19 surge and the future surges that will come as endemic, and one that we should be able to expect will occur as part of an endemic disease, and to be able to live with it in the same way we currently do for flu, influenza, and other respiratory diseases.
The government has also assured that Malaysia's existing supply of COVID-19 vaccine is sufficient for the public. Azrul discusses who should receive the booster shot and how Malaysia can approach the future procurement and distribution of vaccines against the virus.
It's important for medically vulnerable persons to be protected by strengthening their immunity with a COVID-19 booster, ideally within 12 months from their last dose, which is pretty much almost everyone now in the entire country. Those who were vaccinated with the Sinovac vaccine in particular need to receive boosters immediately. The issue is whether or not the vaccines that we currently have available in country are updated and able to provide the necessary coverage and protection against severe illness, hospitalization, and premature death. Malaysia is very, very much behind many of the countries that have actually updated their COVID-19 vaccines. Pfizer and Moderna's monovalent vaccine targeting the XBB 1.5 COVID-19 strain comes to mind. Though these monovalent vaccines target the XBB 1.5 strain, which is no longer really dominant, they do provide better protection than current bivalent vaccines against the various COVID-19 Omicron strains that are currently circulating today. So they will and still generate a strong immune response that will protect against the current variants, which you might hear of is EG.5 and BA 2.86. So what we need to see happen right now is we need new and updated vaccines to become available in Malaysia, at least in the private market, so that people can decide if they want to get vaccinated.
Having looked to Japan and South Korea as models for economic development, Malaysia is now also interested in learning from China, says Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. The Prime Minister made the remark during an interview with news portal Asahi Shimbun in Tokyo during a working visit in conjunction with the ASEAN-Japan Commemorative Summit. Anwar said there is a need to review any policy that has been in place for the past 40 years. He was referring to the Look East policy that former Prime Minister Tan Sri Dr. Mahathir Mohamad introduced in 1982 to learn best practices from Asian countries such as Korea and Japan. He said due to issues relating to digital technologies and cybersecurity that are changing the global landscape, there is a need to expand the decades-old policy and include China in the mix of countries to learn from. As for Malaysia's relationship with Japan under the policy, Anwar said it should also include replicating Japanese work ethics and sharing of technologies.
Different tribes.
Malaysia's trade and investment missions to Japan have achieved 29.6 billion ringgit of potential investments and 2.8 billion ringgit of potential exports this year. According to the Investment, Trade and Industry Ministry, the most recent trade and investment mission to Japan achieved 6.6 billion ringgit of potential foreign direct investment (FDI) and 700 million ringgit of potential exports.
A total 23 billion ringgit potential investment and 2.1 billion ringgit potential exports were previously secured from the first mission in June. The latest mission was held concurrently with the ASEAN-Japan Commemorative Summit, with Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim leading the delegation. A roundtable meeting was arranged between Anwar and 25 Japanese captains of industry, as well as one-to-one meetings with companies like NEC Corporation and Mitsui & Co. Ltd. Meanwhile, Meeting Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz also conducted one-to-one meetings with companies including Miyoshi Oil and Fat Co. Ltd, Marubeni Corporation, Nichicon Corporation and Itochu Corporation. According to Zafrul, many of the investments are from Malaysia's target sectors, including renewable energy, electrical and electronics, chemicals and the digital economy.
Meanwhile, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department in charge of Federal Territories, Dr. Zalia Mustafa, will discuss the proposal for holding local council elections with the Local Government Development Ministry KPKT. Dr. Zalia said she took note of the suggestion, but this matter needed to be discussed with her counterpart in the ministry. She was speaking to reporters after attending a welcoming ceremony and briefing at the Kuala Lumpur City Hall DBKL at Menara DBKL 1 earlier today. Media reports had quoted Kuala Lumpur DAP chairman Tan Kok Wai as urging the government to introduce local council elections in the federal capital, which he said would strengthen democracy in the federal territory. Tan said holding local council elections in Kuala Lumpur would ensure sustainability and allow residents to choose their local councillors. Meanwhile, Dr. Zalia said the Federal Territory Department would retain its functions as a department and its administration would come under the PM's department, although the federal capital was previously under a ministry of its own. We'll go for a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Siapakah Gempak Most Wanted 2023? Anda yang akan menentukannya.
Layari www.gempakmostwantedawards.com sekarang untuk mengundi.
Gempak Most Wanted Awards terpaling trending.
Welcome back. At least 118 people have been killed and hundreds more injured after a magnitude 6.2 earthquake struck the Gansu province in northwest China. Authorities have mobilized a range of emergency services in the wake of the quake, which struck just before midnight on Monday, but rescue efforts are proving difficult in sub-zero temperatures. The quake damaged thousands of homes, many of them made of dilapidated brick structures, and sent residents fleeing into the streets. Although 72 hours after a quake is the most likely time to rescue survivors, this will be shortened by the harsh weather, with trapped victims at greater risk. Local media reported that the tremors were felt as far away as the major city of Xi'an, some 570 kilometers away. Dozens of smaller aftershocks followed, and officials warned that quakes of more than magnitude 5.0 were possible in the coming days. Earthquakes are common in western China. The country's deadliest quake in recent decades was in 2008, when a magnitude 8.0 quake struck Sichuan, killing more than 80,000 people. In other news, protesters set fire to a train in Bangladesh, killing at least 4 people during a nationwide strike called by the opposition. It is the latest in a series of calls for the government to step down ahead of elections next month. Officials said protesters set fire to 3 compartments of an express train on Tuesday, but details of how many people were on board the train remain unclear, and the government has yet to comment. Dozens of buses and vehicles have been torched in recent anti-government protests, with at least 6 people killed since 28 October. With its top leaders either in jail or in exile, the opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party wants Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to step down and make way for a neutral government to oversee the election on January 8th. Hasina, who is seeking her 4th consecutive term, has repeatedly blamed the BNP for recent deadly street protests. International troops stationed on the South Korean side of the border with North Korea will resume carrying guns, according to the United Nations Command UNC. This comes as South Korea's tensions with the North increased following a spy satellite launch in November and an intercontinental ballistic missile test this week.
A spokesperson for the UNC said the move was aimed at protecting both civilian and military personnel in the border area, formerly known as the Joint Security Area (JSA). The US-led UNC is a multinational military force that oversees affairs in the demilitarized zone between the 2 countries, which remain technically at war. Both sides of the peninsula had agreed not to arm their troops on the JSA under a 2018 Inter-Korean military pact, but North Korean personnel have reportedly been carrying weapons since November, following a partial unraveling of the agreement. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol also appointed Cho Taek-yul as the country's new foreign minister and National Security Advisor Cho Tae-yong as the new spy agency chief. Pyongyang has since responded by scrapping the agreement and pledging to deploy stronger armed forces and new weapons.
Meanwhile, a volcano has erupted in southwest Iceland after weeks of intense earthquake activity, placing the region on high alert. The eruption on the Reykjanes Peninsula began on Monday at around 10:17 p.m. local time.
The Meteorological Office said the crack in the volcano was about 3.5 kilometers long, with the lava flowing at a rate of around 100 to 200 cubic meters per second. It added that this was many times more than in previous eruptions on the peninsula in recent years. Authorities evacuated around 4,000 people from the fishing town of Grandavik last month after scientists determined that a tunnel of magma was shifting beneath them. For weeks, the Nordic country has been expecting an eruption after an increase in seismic activity in the region around the capital of Reykjavik since the end of October. Volcanic eruptions are not uncommon in Iceland, but the Reykjanes Peninsula has not experienced one for 8 centuries until 2021. Since then, there have been 3 eruptions, one each in 2021, 2022 and earlier this year.
That wraps up AWANI Tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.